Hey guys, this is Nader, and for our experiment, Inez, Murad, and I chose to do homophobia. Now, throughout this video, I will be commentating over the data that we collected, not only to better explain what we found, but also to give a better explanation of what we actually saw in our subjects. Now, as for the procedure itself in this experiment, it was pretty easy, but at the same time, not gonna lie, kinda awkward for us. Mainly because we'd be acting as if we were homosexuals. Now, for the first part, we'd enter any store in the mall and act as if we were a couple, which, easier said than done. For number two, we decide on our subjects based on any random assignment. So whenever we pretty much saw a couple, or maybe even a single person, we would approach them. Once we found the person that we wanted to approach, we would actually go up to them and ask them if it was okay if we took a picture of me and my boyfriend, quote unquote. As for four, we would record the reaction through audio or video and tally that reaction as yes, no, or a gray area. Now, through this procedure, there's a couple things we'd have to explain. As for one, we chose Orland Park Mall. And the reason for this is if we went to a nearby mall, such as Chicago Ridge Mall, maybe we'd run into people that we know. And that would actually ruin the experiment, because if they knew that we weren't a couple, then the experiment itself will not work. As for number four, you notice an area that says quote-unquote gray area. Now, a gray area is an event where pretty much you don't really get a straight yes or no answer. Meaning, if they said yes, but they seemed kind of awkward about it. If they said no, but actually gave a good reason for why they couldn't. Maybe they were in a rush, or maybe they had to go somewhere. At the same time, there were a few gray areas that were not based on yes or no and are kind of more explainable by the clip itself. As for our hypothesis, we believe that if we approach random people asking to take a photo of us as a couple, then we would get equal amount of yes and no answers, and the gray area will contain the greatest margin of people.
Excuse me? Could you take a picture of me and my boyfriend real quick? Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Nobody ever wants to do it. Excuse me? Could you get a picture of me and my boyfriend? By any chance? Please? We've been asking around and everyone wants to do it. Excuse me? Could you take a picture of me and my boyfriend real quick? So what? Take a picture of me and my boyfriend.
This video can best be described in one sentence.
Do you mind if we take a picture of me and my boyfriend real quick? Yeah, real quick. No. No? You sure? Yeah. Alright.
Now, as for the gray areas in our experiment, the most common thing we found, if not everything we found in that area, was disbelief and surprise. And at that point, most of them were just going to do it out of common courtesy. In the next following clips, you're going to see a lot of that.
We just asked her, excuse me, can you take a picture of me and my boyfriend? I can't take it on myself. Yeah. You can see okay. Yeah.
So, personally for me, I feel that the idea of homosexuality hasn't really become more accepted, but more tolerated. Through most of the experiences, I felt that a lot of the people, when they did say yes, were more of just saying yes to be nice. But although some people did actually say yes just to say yes because they were fine with it, what do you feel?
I do feel like people are more tolerant. Well, most people, actually, some people just gave it straight up no's because they weren't comfortable with the idea. I'd agree with you in this one.
Also, one thing I noticed as we were doing this, the gender difference when approaching people was like kind of obvious. I mean, when you'd go up to a girl about it, they'd feel a little less awkward and kind of they were accepting to it. But if I went up to a guy, it was more or less, you know, shock or just very uncomfortable.
And I also noticed, although it seemed like more guys said no than girls, it felt like there was an equal number of people who were uncomfortable on both sides. And I think the reason for this was girls, when they approached, because we were a different gender, they were a little more comfortable with it. As they were more comfortable to do it, but when we asked a guy to do it, because we were the same gender, it feels like things were a little more awkward for them, or they had friends to impress, and they just said no and walked away.
Right, right. And at the same time, like, especially when we got to those people that said, don't do it, there were two guys. And personally, I feel when I went up to the first guy, he looked like he was kind of okay with it. But at the same time, when his friend said, don't do it, it immediately kind of clicked in his head to don't do it because that peer pressure kind of pushed him to not want to do it.
And going back on what Nader just said, it seemed like when the guys were actually alone, they really didn't have much of a problem with it. I mean, you could tell they were uncomfortable, but they went ahead and did it because they didn't seem to have anyone to impress. And I say impress because it seems to be the end thing for guys to not be tolerant of it unless the couple is female. And another thing is actually age difference. The reactions based on the ages of the people we approached. It seemed, I'm going to use the girls as an example for this one because there wasn't that peer pressure as much. It seemed like the older women were a lot more shocked than the younger girls. The younger girls were like, oh, okay, give us the camera. The older people were like, wait, what did you just say?
So, I mean, looking at the numbers and kind of hitting on our hypothesis, we hit 16 people. Well, not hit 16 people, but we approached 16 people. And out of that, we got 5 yeses, 3 nos, and 8 of them were gray areas, meaning that they said yes but had a kind of awkward way of approaching it, said no but had a good reason, or, you know, situations we really can't explain, like disbelief or just not saying anything. And I think that really goes with our hypothesis because, I mean, we said that gray area would be the largest margin. So, to go with our group conclusion, which was we believe that there was more toleration but not as much exception. And that kind of goes along with the gray area because if people are doing it but not necessarily accepting of it, then that just shows toleration.